Here's a walkthrough of how I used the Mother-32 or improvised with the Mother-32 in the last video. So if you haven't seen that video yet, I did a 12-minute or so long improvisation using just the Mother-32 and some other effects just to make it sound a little bit lusher, so I added some reverb to it. So I started with programming up a sequence. There's two different ways you can program up a sequence. The first is to do it in keyboard mode, so holding Shift and keyboard, and then if I hold, let's see, I think it's record, Shift, record, enters in record mode, and now I can step through the pattern that I want to do, so let's just go. And if I hit play on that, let's transpose that up a couple octaves. Increase the speed. So there's a basic pattern that I might start working with, something just in C minor there. And then I started designing the sound by using first just the built-in VCO here, tuning it up. So there's our sound, and then I dulled it off here with the cutoff, and then slowed down the rate there and increased the attack time, having the envelope generator turned on, no sustain turned on, long attack and long release. And then where this really starts to come in is by having the envelope generator modify the filter's cutoff frequency, so turning that up. Let's jump up a few more octaves. Slow down our tempo. Maybe increase the resonance a little bit. So there's the basic sound. Then I added this sound by using the LFO rather than as a modulation source for modulating either the filter's cutoff frequency or parameters for the VCO. I used the LFO as a second oscillator, and we do this by taking a patch cable here, patching in the output of either the triangle or the square. Let's go with the square for a little bit richer timbre, patching the output of that LFO square output into the input of the external audio input up there. And where that comes in is on the mixer here. This dial allows me to go back and forth between the external input, which if I don't have anything plugged in there, is just noise. Right now it's filtered noise because it's passing through our VCF there. So filtered noise there, but if I plug in something else, like my LFO here, get this playing, open back up that filter. Now we can hear, which typically is down in the rhythm range, but as I sweep this up, I can bring that into the spectrum of the same as the our VCO over here. And then the trick is to use the KB for keyboard output. It's the pitch information that's being output by the sequence here to control the the LFO's rate. So let's grab another patch cable, patch up our keyboard output into our LFO's rate. Then all we have to do is tune it. Bring back down our cutoff. and it tracks fairly well. So if I were to jump up a couple octaves or down a couple octaves, I find that I have to keep coming back to it, kind of nudging it up, that it doesn't track perfectly across the range. And then I've got this mix knob to go back and forth between the sound. So that was the basics of kind of the sound that I was working with inside of that video. And then what I was really interested in that video is experimenting with kind of glitching the built-in sequencer in the Mother-32. And I did that through two means. There's a reset button down here, or reset input, which causes the sequencer to jump back to the beginning of the sequence, as well as a tempo input, which controls this dial here for changing the tempo at which this is operating at. And I did this using, we could use any source we want to, but I've assigned this assign output to be a random value every time a new step is produced by the step sequencer. So I used that by plugging that into the multiplier here, which just gives me 2 copies of that same signal coming out these multi-outputs there. So then I take and I plug one of those multi-outs into the tempo controls. So here's our sequence untempo controlled. Consistent tempo. But then when I change this, got every single step is at its own tempo. Then I take and I plug in the other version of that. Rather than taking and plugging that straight into the reset, I plug that first into the mix 2 input. So this VC mix here is a voltage controlled mix knob, and the number 2 is on the right hand side, so the high setting for that. So as I sweep this knob over, it's going from nothing to my random step output there from my assigned output. What I'm going to use that for is a way of controlling the likelihood that this step sequencer is going to get reset back to the beginning. So at a minimum value here, it's not going to get reset. At a maximum value, it's likely going to get reset. So then I just grab the output of that voltage controlled mixer, plug that into the reset, sweep up the likelihood. There we can see it jump back to step 5 to step 1. Then increase the overall tempo. Maybe increase the attack time a little bit. Maybe switch into editing each of these steps. So let's hold shift, step. Let's go into step 1. Then while we're in step 1, let's increase the number of ratchets. So that's the basics of it. Then from there I just add in some delay and some reverb. And that's the patch. So hopefully you guys find that inspiring and useful. See you next time.